Hello everyone, this is Space Hunter Nebula and I'm returning with part 7 of What If King Piccolo Won. This is one of the final parts and I don't want to waste any time, so I'm just going to get straight into the recap. The events of Resurrection F did not happen in this scenario, nor did the events of the Universe 6 tournament, and as a result there was no Goku Black or Tournament of Power arcs, since both arcs are tied to the events of the Universe 6 tournament arc. However, the Broly movie did happen in some sort of way, because Raditz, the head of the Space Demon Corps, decided to continue building up the army, and therefore sent more scouts to recruit stronger soldiers. Among the soldiers was Broly, who, just like in canon, was found by Chilai and Lemmo. Paragus was also taken back. Raditz and Paragus worked out a deal which allowed Broly to be Raditz's bodyguard in exchange for the both of them to have a place to stay. Raditz trained Broly to be able to better utilize his ki and to use techniques of his own. Later, Moro escaped the galactic prison, but Miras and Nail were able to near instantly intercept him, not giving him enough time to absorb any power, and then they were able to kill him. Finally, Granola got the idea to kill Raditz. He made his wish on Tarambo, then came after the Demon Space Corps Emperor, as well as Broly. What he didn't account for, though, was Broly's rage at Raditz's death, which allowed Broly to become the legendary Super Saiyan and kill Granola. The Demon Space Corps was left in Banyu's command after Raditz's death, though Broly still remains its second-place commander. And with that all being said, let's get into the video. Do you remember how I said Dr. Briefs was working with Dr. Gero? Well, he took inspiration from Dr. Gero's android body in a way. But instead of building himself an android body, he decided to make a robot version of himself, complete with a copy of his soul and consciousness. Bulma didn't do this for herself because she found it really creepy, so she actually did die in the explosion of the base, unfortunately. However, while the real human Dr. Briefs died, there exists another, Android 22, which is, the robot. Or, I guess he would be Android 21, because there's no Android 21 in this, but we're not going to call him that. We're just going to call him Robo Briefs instead, which is a stupid name, but yeah. Robo Briefs, or Android 22, or whatever you want to call him, decides to work on his own projects after the destruction of the original base. He decided he would make his own version of Cell in a way. Yes, a true genetic freak. Except, no, he didn't make Scott Steiner, he made something much worse, if such a thing was even believable. You know how Cell was an amalgamation of other people's DNA? Well, the creation that Robo Briefs makes is the same in a way, except his form is much more decisive. He is a mostly Namekian Saiyan hybrid, although he does have some of Cell's DNA, specifically the part that allows him to copy other people's attacks. This Namekian Saiyan bioandroid would be called Recorder because of this ability. As for his strength, he had the power of Super Baby Vegeta 2. But there is a catch. The robotic Dr. Briefs, after studying the Saiyan DNA he took from Nappa, is able to spot something within that is quite intriguing to him. It seems like there is a deep power locked within the Saiyans. This power, of course, is Super Saiyan, which Nappa would not have unlocked in this scenario, given he doesn't train anymore. You could argue he would have unlocked it in space a long time ago, but I never mentioned that, so your argument would be incorrect. So 50 times Super Baby Vegeta 2's strength is basically 5 times Ozaru Baby Vegeta's strength, which is somewhere above Super 17 levels. That's what Recorder's power level is when he's in Super Saiyan, because Robo Briefs is crazy and he just decided to give that to him. The other grades of Super Saiyan, however, are not known about, since Super Saiyan would first need to be trained and modified to reach them, and Recorder hasn't trained at all. As for Drum and the others' power levels, Drum at this point is around a hypothetical Super Saiyan 3 Baby Vegeta's power level, so he's 4 times stronger than Super Baby Vegeta 2. As for Base, he's at Super Baby Vegeta 2's power level. Then the other people in Drum's inner circle are around Buhan level, and the weaker ones among them are at Super Buu level. Then there's Piano in dead last around Frieza's level. Just Namek Frieza's level. He has basically given up on training since everyone is way stronger than him, so he only trains enough to keep up at the same power level. Still though, this is far more powerful than Nappa and the former King Piccolo, who are still around Ginyu Force levels and are only training to keep up the strength they already have from that era. Another update on King Piccolo's life, he has actually gotten into painting, and while his paintings are incredibly disturbing and gory, they're technically excellent. Every single rule of creating a good painting, if there are even rules to doing such a thing, King Piccolo follows, and his paintings are beautiful. Despite their vile concepts and origins, of course, their beauty could bring a tear to your eye. As for Nappa, he expands his woodworking skills into construction skills as well. He also gets into puzzles and brain teasers. I don't know why I'm telling you guys all of this, but I guess I'm just into informing people about the activities of evil old men. Speaking of old men, Nappa isn't too far away from becoming one. He'd be around his late 60s at this point, and while he still has time left, he has about 12 years or so until he'll exit his Saiyan prime. We're not going to go 12 years into the future, of course, but I just wanted this to be known. Drum and all the other demons ruling the earth honestly don't have the time to get into any cool activities other than Piano, because he doesn't train anymore. Piano would sometimes visit King Piccolo and Nappa, and Piano probably developed some similar interests to King Piccolo, so he'd get into classical music, into literature, and into art. As for his literary taste, he would lean more into the darker side of the literary world, and he would be into gothic horror. And while he is into art, he isn't a painter like King Piccolo. No, instead he's an art critic, or simply one of those art enjoyers, in quotations, you see hanging around museums. Piano would have actually been the one to help King Piccolo improve all his techniques, which the former Demon King greatly appreciated. Like I said, Drum and the others aren't really into anything. Drum and Bass just spend most of their time training with each other and training their soldiers. While Drum was created entirely to follow King Piccolo's orders, he followed that purpose until the very end, and now he himself is the Demon King. But Drum still has a chip on his shoulder about it all. He doesn't even want to stop training for a second, because he wants to make his father proud, despite his father being proud of him for ages. He keeps pushing himself to his limits, to grow as far as he can, even though he doesn't need to anymore. He keeps training up all his soldiers and his minions, but for what purpose? There's nobody across the universe left to oppose them. Well, nobody they know of anyway. If Nail came across them, he'd lay them all out and kill them, but that's not gonna happen. Anywho, Drum does his best to let Bass know that he's proud of him, immensely so. This fact is not at all lost on Bass, because he is perceptive, and the Prince of the Demons feels the same way about his father. He, however, does sometimes take breaks, not to do anything cool, but rather to meditate and gain a calmer mind. This is something his father certainly lacks these days, despite being the one to instill discipline and mental fortitude in Bass. While Drum doesn't really take any breaks with his training, we actually know this is kind of a bad thing. Goku says as much in the Cell Saga in canon. This is also probably why future Gohan wasn't able to kill his androids, because he never took enough time off to let his body actually heal. In real life, when you work out, you're breaking down your body, and the proteins you eat are used to rebuild it. That car just went by. But your muscles need time to develop or to come back stronger. If you don't stop at least for a little bit, then you'll limit your gains. This is basically what is happening to Drum, except, he's a demon Namekian, so he doesn't eat. I just imagine that the way that works for Namekians and demon Namekians is that they get something out of the minerals in the water or whatever. And while Bass is weaker than Drum, this isn't because he trains less, this is simply because Drum is many years older than him and had a serious head start. And that head start includes all of those people that he fused with in the Cell Saga. As for the other soldiers, they would be stronger, but they only really train with each other. What would be good for their growth is if they had a more experienced or more powerful training partner to face off with, so they could get stronger that way. Bass figures that Drum could maybe sometimes take breaks, in quotations, in the form of training their weaker soldiers. Drum eventually agrees to this, and while he doesn't enjoy it that much, he just wants his son to stop worrying, so he does it for him. Eventually, Recorder is ready to face down the demon horde once and for all. He enters Demon Central City and begins massacring every single demon Namekian he's met with. Hundreds of them are killed, and Drum, Bass, and the other Demon Corps show up to see what's going on. And when Drum sees that one of their own is doing this, he is mad and also confused. He goes up to Recorder and begins to question him. Recorder does not answer anything, and he attacks Drum. Drum then gets into a fight with Recorder, and pretty confidently wins this since he's 4 times stronger than him. Recorder sees this, and he begins to power up further. Bass joins in the fray, and he beats down on Recorder with his father, but Recorder blows them away with a massive wave of ki, and his skin becomes golden yellow. This is Super Saiyan Recorder, or perhaps Super Namekian Recorder, Super Android Recorder, Golden Recorder. Whatever you want to call it, the Saiyan Namekian hybrid is now 50 times stronger than before, although he has sustained injuries from his beatdown. While Drum was 4 times stronger than him before, Recorder is now 12.5 times stronger than Drum. The transformed Recorder takes advantage of the battle from Drum and Bass, easily beating them into the ground. The warriors of Drum's demon forces decide to make a serious decision, fusing into each other and becoming two beings. Drum and Bass are joined by these two beings, and while these two beings are on Bass's level or a little below, they're not enough to turn the tides. Drum tries his best, withstanding the attacks and holding up barriers for Bass and the other two to use, but they get destroyed as well. All hope seems lost as they continue getting beaten, but Drum has an idea. Drum knows from Bass's advice that he wasn't always the best trainer he could have been. His methods were flawed. Drum always knew once Bass was an adult that his son was actually smarter than him. He was a little sensitive about it, but it also made him very proud of his son. And even now, as this seemingly unstoppable threat faces them, Bass continued to fight, despite even being weaker than his father. He joined him in battle unwaveringly to keep the demon empire afloat, and Drum was going to miss that. Drum suddenly creates a huge barrier around him, Bass, and the other two. Recorder shoots blast after blast at it, and it's slowly cracking. Drum tells Bass how much he's proud of him, and how much better he is at everything than him. Bass is confused, asking his father what he's talking about. Drum tells Bass he's outlived his purpose on this world, and that the next generation should be the one to take over. He expresses his feelings of Bass's superiority to himself, and gives Bass the final statement on the matter. Bass will need to absorb his father into himself to win the battle. Bass is immediately taken aback by this and refuses, but Drum makes the case even harder. He knows that he won't be able to win without doing this. Their opponent is simply too powerful. Bass grants him that this statement is true, but he posits that surely there must be another way to do this. Bass even offers to fuse into his own father. Drum tells him no. He states that he could never rob his son of the opportunity to live his life. He guides Bass's hand to his head and he presses it down while simultaneously freeing the energy from his body. A shiny white light envelops the entire barrier and it goes down, since Drum is no longer there. Recorder then sends down another golden blast, but is instantly reflected and thrown back at him. There, surrounded by the smoke and dissipating light, stood Bass, his cape waving in the wind and a determined look on his face. He wants to be sad about his father's disappearance, but right now is not the time, and he immediately rushes at Recorder, beginning to beat him to a pulp. The Saiyan Namekian hybrid is confused by this and tries his hardest to fight back, but he can't get very many attacks in as Bass hits him at full force repeatedly. Blow after blow leaves a mark in the android's body and he gets weaker with each attack. Eventually Bass beats Recorder so hard that the golden yellow energy dissipates from his skin and becomes a dark shade of orange. No, this isn't the orange form, it's false Super Saiyan. Yes, Recorder is being beaten so hard here that he can't even maintain control of Super Saiyan. But that's not all, as Bass is making sure to give Recorder every ounce of pain he can take. Bass would go in on him for minutes without break, eventually stopping once the hybrid drops out of false Super Saiyan. Recorder tries to heal his injuries by regenerating, but he can't do it. He doesn't have the energy to do so. Bass takes one final look at the genetic freak who made him lose his father and puts two of his fingers together, sending a blast similar to one of Frieza's death barrage blasts into his head, blowing his brains out against the ground. Recorder crumples, drops of his head strewn about the scene. The sight is a disgusting mess, but Bass doesn't care. This is what happens to the man who made his father give himself up. We know in canon that fused Namekians can talk to each other, since Nail and Kami were speaking to Piccolo in Dragon Ball Super during the Tournament of Power, so Bass enters the realm of his mind, which he can do since he has true control over his head, and he begins to query a single thing to Drum. Why? Drum makes his case even clearer for fusing into his son, which Bass understands since he did just destroy Recorder in his gold form, but still, he wasn't planning on losing his father anytime soon either. He offers to give Drum life again in the form of another demonic egg child, but Drum rejects this, telling Bass to keep the power and use it in a better way than he ever did. He explains again that his son knows a lot more about training and discipline than he ever did, and he says that if Bass ever needs him, he'll be right there in the back of his head for tips in combat. That is the one thing that Drum has over Bass other than power, which the power doesn't even matter anymore because it's consolidated into Bass. Bass is sad about this whole ordeal, but he knows that this is ultimately the best thing they could have done in this particular situation. Bass fusing into Drum would have had the same results, true, but Bass was simply more intelligent and more alert than Drum was, so he'd understand the realm of battle a lot more than his father would. Of course, Bass doesn't have as much combat experience, so he would have to start training more often with more opponents to get the experience needed, but that would also result in the lower level Demon Namekians becoming stronger as well. And while I am tempted to end things here, we are going to keep the story going a little longer. After all, there's still a plausible way some certain events from GT can happen. But with that being said, If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and have a good day, night, afternoon, or evening, and I am out.